My name's Aurelian, and this is Roarlock, my Devil's Roarlocked account on a journey to accomplish as much as possible without ever leaving the most dangerous region in the Sea of Thieves.
The devil's roar, a land left unexplored.
Way back in episode 1, I said that I wanted to find out everything there is to know about the Roar, to explore every nook, learn every system and strategy, and discover things that maybe no one has before. I've now spent over 160 hours in the Devil's Roar on this account, so for this 10th episode, I'm gonna do something a bit different. I want to focus entirely on exploration and experimentation to uncover whatever secrets the Devil's Roar may still be hiding after all these years. Some of it will be pure speculation, some of it desperate scouring for anything I can find. There are no guarantees today, but I do have some surprises in store. To start things off, I have this completely unfounded theory that there's an Easter egg somewhere in this region that has to do with the Stitcher's Sorrow shanty. The shanty was first heard in the trailer introducing the Devil's Roar and was finally added to the game about 2 years later. Lore-wise, Stitcher Jim has a pretty rocky relationship with several characters, most notably having betrayed Grace Morrow here after discovering the first Box of Wonders secrets. So I've always wondered if there was some kind of secret waiting to be activated by playing Stitcher's Sorrow in a particular spot or to a particular NPC. For the record, I have not tried this out anywhere before today. I want to be genuinely surprised alongside you guys if this theory of mine pans out. So for my first test, Grace here is the obvious choice. Let's see how she reacts to me playing the theme song of her mortal nemesis. Alright, well, nothing happened. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that it's not that easy. If it doesn't do anything for Grace, though, I doubt it'll work on anyone else here at the outpost, but I'll check every NPC anyway and report back. Yeah, no one else had any reaction to the shanty. I even tried playing it on both halves of the shipwreck and got nothing. But there's one last NPC I want to try. In the Athena's Fortune novel, Stitcher Jim betrays the Pirate Lord, so there's a slight chance he might still be bitter about it. Nope, guess not. Alright, no luck yet with the shanty, but I'll keep trying in other spots. For now, let's move on to something different. Although it's by no means new or undiscovered, there is actually one lesser known secret here in the Devil's Roar. On the north side of Cinder Islet, there's an underwater arch and altar that have been in the game since the Devil's Roar was added, but that never really served any purpose. Looking at this, some of you might have realized that it uses the same triangle keyhole as the altar in the Sunken Sorrow quest. And in fact, a Reddit post from a few years ago made the same connection. So the question is, does something happen if you bring the key from that quest to the altar at Cinder Islet? Obviously, Roarlock here can't test that since the Sunken Sorrow quest takes place entirely outside of the Roar, but let's switch over to my main account for a second and see what happens. I'm ready to not be surprised when nothing happens. Gotta make sure you go through the arch, that's a big important part of the ritual. And... yep, nothing. I also tried to use the key while wearing the Sunken Curse and even the Ashen Curse, but nothing happened with that either. At least for now, it looks like this altar is purely decorative, so that's another dead end for me. With two potential theories turning up nothing, I decided it was time to really start exploring. If I wanted to find something that no one had ever found before, I'd need to scour every inch of every island, from the peaks of the volcanoes to the murky depths beyond the shorelines. So I spent an entire day doing just that, checking all the islands, sea volcanoes, sea posts, and even rock formations for anything at all that might have gone unnoticed. Unfortunately, my findings were few and far between, and the ones that stood out most were either inconsequential, like this Kraken skull and bit of spine over by Glowstone Key, or they were things that I knew had already been discovered, like the fact these two bulb-shaped sea volcanoes at V15 and Y19 actually have an opening at the top and can be descended into. If you've never seen this and you're curious, there's nothing much to it really. They're both just hollow and lead down to an underwater cavern with nothing notable inside. It's pretty cool to be inside one while it's erupting though, and I even got that glitch where the volcano eruption isn't real and I was able to just hang out up top and have nothing happen to me. Alright Walter, what do you say? Does this do anything for you? Wait a minute. No way! Alright, that's a second Ancient Skelly on this account. First one since episode 1. Not exactly a secret, but I had no idea you could sit in this cage here at Petra's Rest, so that's pretty cool I guess. Who am I kidding? That's nothing. Alright, I feel like I should state for the record that the first official mention of the Red Maw was this journal written by Grace that's been here at Ashen Reaches this entire time, so Please, Rare, I'll love you forever. Also, since the name of the tavern here at Mara's Peak is the Charred Parrot, I tried talking to Tallulah while holding Lucy and made sure to pick the dialogue option where she explains how the tavern got its name, but sadly, no special dialogue or anything came up. Aside from that, there was nothing else to report. I tried playing Stitcher's Sorrow to the corpses of the Forsaken Shores Alliance in hopes it would awaken their angry spirits, and I also played it in any cool spots I could find, but nothing ever happened. I even tried playing it for Grace again after starting the Heart of Fire Tall Tale, but still no luck. It looks like my theory about the shanty is thoroughly debunked, which isn't too surprising since it was founded on nothing more than a hunch, but at least now we know for sure. Ever since I started this series, and especially after I mentioned it in episode 2, I've gotten comment after comment telling me to make an exception and do the Heart of Fire Tall Tale to get the Ashen Curse and the Ashen Dragon Hole for my ship. In case you're not aware, the reason I can't do it is that the first part of the Tall Tale involves going to Liar's Backbone outside the Devil's Roar to retrieve a key that opens the main dungeon the rest of the Tall Tale takes place in. Plenty of people have offered to join me on my ship and go get the key while I stay in the Roar, but in addition to the fact that I stated in episode 1 that this would be a solo-only challenge, there's actually one other problem most people tend to forget. To get the Ashen Curse, you need to complete all of the Tall Tale's commendations, and one of those commendations is to find and read 5 different journals. Although 4 of the journals can be found in the main dungeon at Devil's Thirst, one journal is hidden on Liar's Backbone. Having a crewmate read the journal doesn't progress the commendation for me, so no matter what, I would have to leave the Roar in order to unlock the Ashen Curse. I know a bunch of you probably want me to just make an exception and go there myself, but considering the only thing this exception would do is unlock some cosmetics, I'd personally find it a lot more fun to find some kind of workaround that might allow me to finish the Tall Tale without making an exception. Because while the Ashen Curse requires all commendations, unlocking the Ashen Dragon Hole can be achieved by simply finishing the Tall Tale once. So what if there was a way for me to do that without going to Liar's Backbone? A while back, I found a video showing a way to skip most of the Shores of Gold Tall Tale by glitching through the ground and falling straight into the boss room. The fact that a geometry glitch like that could potentially get me into the dungeon without needing the key from Liar's Backbone is already huge, but the method used in this video had a much bigger implication. When performing this glitch, the person completely skips a checkpoint midway through the Tall Tale where they obtain the key to the main dungeon. Yet when they arrive in the boss room, the Gold Hoarder is there, the fight starts like normal, and defeating him properly completes the Tall Tale. My main fear, even if I managed to glitch into the Heart of Fire dungeon, had been that the game would still think I was at the first checkpoint in the quest and wouldn't activate the final cutscene with Stitch or Jim. But this Shores of Gold glitch seemed to imply that that wouldn't be the case. So now all I needed was to find a way into the dungeon. Thing is, I've secretly been trying to do this for months. So far, I thought of 2 potential ways to do it. First, I tried to use the grapple gun to go through the dungeon backwards from its exit, but as you might expect, I eventually reached a door that couldn't be opened from the outside, and I couldn't find any obvious ways to glitch through it. Second, I thought it might be possible to glitch through the main door, and I even found this spot to the right of the door where the physics of underwater movement allowed me to wedge myself in a bit. But no matter how hard I tried, I never managed to get all the way in. Finally, I began a desperate search around the bit of the dungeon I was able to access from the exit. I found a few weird spots that allowed me to straight up walk into a wall, but these didn't lead to anything more. Still, these spots gave me hope that the geometry throughout the dungeon wasn't bulletproof. So I kept searching, and eventually, I got in. Holy shit. For the sake of the person at Rare whose job it is to prevent players from glitching out of bounds, I'm not going to show the exact spot I used to pull this off. All I'll say is that although it was a pain to get to every time I died or black screened, it was extremely easy to pull off once I actually reached the spot. So I was basically able to do it as many times as I needed. So having found a consistent way to break out of bounds, I still needed to break back in and complete the Tall Tale. Seeing this big gray mass of rock below me, I figured there was a good chance something was down there for me to land on. So I charged up a sword dash and went for it. And as luck would have it, I landed right on top of the final room in the dungeon, the one where the Stitcher Jim cutscene takes place. My hope was that once I got down there, I could maybe try to backtrack a little so that re-entering the room the proper way would activate the cutscene. After dozens of deaths trying to find a way to drop into the room, I finally managed to pull it off, but even after backtracking to the doors where the 3 paths converge, the cutscene never activated. Still, I hadn't given up yet. I thought maybe the game could tell that I hadn't actually completed one of the paths, especially since there are a bunch of switches throughout the dungeon that need to be hit with firebombs in order to open doors. So, since my glitch spot that got me into the walls dropped me off pretty close to the entrance of the dungeon, I tried to find a way back in there, and after a dozen more deaths, I finally found a spot that allowed me to swim up straight through the floor. No way, I just had to go underneath it? This was it. I was finally in the dungeon proper. I even swam back to the main entrance just to be extra safe. I made my way to the chamber with the 3 doors, picked the leftmost path, and began the journey through. The one issue I ran into was that every time I died, I would respawn at the checkpoint at the very end of the dungeon, meaning I'd then have to make my way back to my glitch spot, break out of bounds and back in again, and then retread the entire dungeon to get back to where I died. But honestly, I wanted this to work more than anything, and I'd go through the dungeon as many times as it took. Throughout the blue path, all the traps, switches, doors, and waves of skellies worked as normal. I even read the journal along the way, and it properly registered in my commendations. At last, I reached the final door, opened it, and stepped into the cutscene chamber, only for it to not activate once again. I went back in and tried the center green path, and that one didn't work either. I then restarted the entire tall tale in case me entering the cutscene room earlier had irreversibly broken it. But even on a fresh run, going through the orange path on the right, the cutscene still didn't work. In fact, although the journals had registered in my commendations, I hadn't received the commendations for completing any of the 3 paths. So, despite having now completed the actual content of the tall tale, I'd hit yet another brick wall, and one that seemed pretty much insurmountable. But if glitching into the dungeon wasn't an option, there was one final possibility. If I could steal the key to the dungeon from another crew doing the tall tale, using it to open the dungeon might trigger the checkpoint and allow me to complete the rest of it normally. Unfortunately, the odds of naturally stumbling onto someone doing the tall tale are very slim, so I figured my best bet would be to just find a friendly crew and recruit them. My initial plan to pull this off had been to essentially turn myself into a human Ouija board and hang out on the Ferry of the Damned to communicate with crews outside the Roar from there. But after sitting around for 15 minutes and not seeing a single soul, I dove to a new server to try again. As it turned out, I wouldn't even need to go back to the ferry because after surfacing from my dive, I looked around and found a nearby galleon. I made a mad dash for their ship, and as I approached, I watched as they fought an island cannon without paying much attention to me, which gave me hope that they weren't total sweats and might actually be willing to hear me out. Sure enough, after telling them what I needed from them, they agreed to help, and we sailed back to Mars Peak while showing off our cosmetics and bets to each other. They started the tall tale.
Man, she kind of bad though.
I started it on my end, and since they had never done it before, I explained to them exactly where to go and what to do, promising it would take no more than 10 minutes. I could have sailed alongside them and waited at the nearest point within the Roar, but for some reason, I decided to just wait for them at Mars Peak. I feel like one of those old-timey sailors' wives, like standing on a cliff and just looking out at the sea, just waiting desperately for my beloved to come back. The minutes began to drag on a bit, and I suspected that they might have decided this was a waste of their time and just bounce and ditch me. But eventually... My beloved! My heroes, you've come back. Watch out for the dock.
We're chilling. Oh my god!
You don't know the trouble we just went through.
Oh no, really?
We just got. Oh my god. Yeah.
Dude, our
We
shit's
accidentally.
sunk, dude.
We got aggroed by a skeleton galleon, and then
What?
we were not paying attention, so we sailed all the way off into the Red Sea and died.
Oh, no way. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you guys. Thank you for bringing this to me. I'm gonna go see if it works. With my key in hand, I sailed as fast as I could to Devil's Thirst. I hadn't told them to wait a few minutes before canceling the tall tale to start another voyage, so I was terrified that the key would disappear any second and waste this perfect opportunity. But thankfully, I arrived at the spot, dove in with the key, and... Alright, moment of truth. Will this key work if it's not mine and I haven't gotten this checkpoint? No. No. Damn. I really thought that would work. All that for nothing. At this point, I also realized that I felt bad for having these guys fetch this key for me and lose their loot in the process, so I did a quick Ash and Athena voyage since I saw they were still in the Roar, then met back up with them to give them all the loot they rightfully deserved for having been such a helpful group of pirates. But now, having exhausted all my options and workarounds just to end up empty-handed, I made a decision. Considering the fact that I'd essentially found a way to experience the entire tall tale on this account without leaving the Roar, it would be criminal to just leave it at that. So, for those of you that have been begging me to make an exception for months now, you win. I'll do it. But for now, I'm only doing it once to get the Ashen Hole for the Diablo. I'll make an exception again to get the Ashen Curse one day, but it'll have to be at the proper time, so you'll just have to be patient until then. Still, to make this as small of an exception as possible, I didn't really want Roarlock to leave the Roar. Instead, I recruited my main account to join me on the Diablo. Listen, I gotta tell you, man, You're like really handsome. Dude, I was about to tell you the same thing. I love your tattoos. Oh, right back at you, bud. I then made him row a rowboat all the way to Lyre's backbone to complete the puzzle and fetch the key. What took you so long? Sorry, I had to fight off a red mob, but I guess you wouldn't know anything about that. Oh, fuck you. Once he returned with the key, I bid him farewell and continued the tall tale myself, with neither Roarlock nor the Diablo having ever left the Devil's Roar. Here we go. For real this time. There's the path commendation. It's official. Gotta tell you, Flameheart, the new one looks way cooler. I mean, what did you think was gonna happen there, dude? Don't mind if I do. Alright, here goes. Lucy's really happy Pendragon saved his friends.
Let's be sure nobody else falls into Flameheart's clutches, eh?
Hi, Pendragon. Spoiler alert, he gets his ship back. I don't know if that's really all that great news. Okay, alright, it's fine. He'll find out eventually. Heart of Fire complete. It finally happened. There we go. There's the commendation. Now let's go equip that Ashen Dragon Hole. Alright, let's take one last look with the Barrel Bombardier Hole. It served me well, but I think the Ashen Dragon Hole might just be a necessary upgrade. Oh yeah, that looks so good with the fire all alongside it. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And considering how much work I had to do to try to get this, even though I had to make an exception, I'd say it's worth it. Even though I wasn't able to complete Heart of Fire unassisted, after it was done, it hit me that my newfound ability to glitch out of the dungeon actually could allow me to investigate not one, not two, but 3 things that quite possibly no one has ever seen before. And by that I mean that I googled the shit out of it and couldn't find any Reddit posts or YouTube videos showing these things, but it's entirely possible someone's done this without documenting it. So I went back into the dungeon once again, this time recruiting my wife's account to go through it and activate the cutscene after I'd already positioned myself to look at the 3 things I wanted to see. First, I don't know about you, but I'm always curious about what's behind locked doors, so I wanted to check out this door that Stitcher Jim goes through after mutilating his hand. Unfortunately, it turns out it's just a short, empty hallway that you can't even stand on, and although I managed to get a shot of him running through it, he just freezes and disappears, nothing special there. Second, in a blink and you'll miss it moment, the masked stranger can be seen observing the final ritual, then disappears after the deed is done. Since she's kind of hidden up there, I wanted to try to get a closer look, and luckily I was able to find the perfect path to get over to her. The ground under her isn't solid, so I had to observe her from a distance, but I still managed to get a look at the paper she's jotting notes on. Turns out it's the same one she had back when players could interact with her before Reaper's hideout was constructed. I was kind of hoping for a crazy Easter egg, but no such luck. Interestingly though, if I get close enough, she reacts by hiding her paper the same way she did back in the day. This made me wonder if the reused asset meant it would be possible to talk to her, but unfortunately, jumping on her head didn't provide me with a button prompt. And if you want to know where she goes when she walks off, well, not very far. And lastly, after Stitcher Jim sticks his hand in the chest of rage, it automatically closes, meaning that it's impossible to ever get a good look at what's inside. I assume the answer would probably be a big fat nothing, but just in case, I glitched out one more time and then moved my other account to trigger the cutscene. Sure enough, it's empty, but hey, I'll bet $10 this is the first time anyone's actually seen what it looks like in there, so that still counts for something in my book. So there you have it. In the end, I wasn't able to find any major secrets or Easter eggs. The best I could do was witness some minor things that, at the very least, I hope I was the first one to see. But before you go, I do have some special announcements. Hey, figured I'd show up in person for this because I have 3 big announcements to make. First off, I just started streaming on Twitch. And by just started, I mean like right now. If you're watching this video the day it's uploaded, I'll be streaming till 7 p.m. Eastern. Just click the link in the description below. And from now on, I'll be live on Twitch every Sunday from noon to 7 p.m. Eastern, so I hope I'll see you in the chat. Second bit of news is that I've finally started a guild for you guys, which I've named the Roaring Devils. And I even pledged the majority of my ships from the ship showcase video to it, so those of you who get a spot will be able to take those out at your leisure. I'll be giving out 10 spots on Twitch via channel point redemptions, but the remaining 13 spots will be picked right here on YouTube. If you comment on this video within the first 24 hours of it going live and include !guild somewhere in your comment, I'll throw your name in the lottery and let you know if it gets picked. And for my final announcement, if you don't get a spot on the guild, don't worry, I've also started a Discord server that's open for anyone and everyone to join, whether you're a fellow roar enthusiast or not. Anyways, that's all I've got. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.